Transformers 1 is the newest film in the franchise, and its place in the larger continuity has been a hot topic for quite a while. The movie takes a deep dive into the origins of Optimus Prime and Megatron, here known as Orion Pax and D16 in their early years, showing how their journey from being best friends to eternal enemies and sparking the entire Cybertronian war. The film is set on Cybertron and explores their history, their home planet, and the genesis of their rivalry. According to producer Lorenzo di Bonaventura, Transformers 1 is set 300 million years before the first Michael Bay movie, offering a prelude to the events we've seen in the live-action films. He confirms that this movie exists beforehand, making it a prequel to the entire franchise. But is it really so? See, this timeline raises some interesting questions, particularly when comparing it to what we've already seen in the Bayverse movies. For example, the race known as the Creators cyberformed planet 65 million years ago using seeds that turn organic matter into transformium. This is in the Bayverse continuity, which they used to create the Transformers race. But Transformers 1 sets its events even further back, 300 million years in the past. This would mean that the timeline roughly has 235 million years before the creators created Transformium, which doesn't really quite align with the established Bayverse lore. The Bayverse also tells us the story of the 13 Primes, who led the early Transformers race as they searched the universe for energy to sustain themselves. They built star harvesters to drain energy from suns and create energon. Their downfall came in 17,000 BC when one of the Primes, called the Fallen, betrayed them. They were betrayed here on Earth, where they sacrificed themselves to hide the matrix of leadership in a place that would be later named as Petra. The timeline of the Primes and the Fallen is way off course with respect to time and place here in Transformers 1, and also this narrative seems to be way off course, which in the case of Transformers 1 follows a different history of the early days of Cybertron, with the ultimate fate of the 13 Primes sealed 300 million years in the past, rather than 17,000 BC in the Bayverse. This makes the idea of the film being a Bayverse prequel really not true. However, theoretically, Transformers 1 could align with both Bumblebee and Rise of the Beasts, as they seem to also break away from the continuity of Michael Bay's movies. When Rise of the Beasts was coming out, they were still selling it as a prequel instead of a reboot, despite the movie contradicting the prior films. Rise of the Beasts also sets up the upcoming Transformers G.I. Joe's crossover movie, which would also not align with the Michael Bay directed movies, as it takes place in a separate continuity from the G.I. Joe films, and no such organizations exist in the Bayverse. Instead, they have NEST, or the Non-Biological Extraterrestrial Species Treaty, a special military unit that somehow acts like the G.I. Joe version. Also, the difference between Rise of the Beasts and most notably The Last Knight is the story around Unicron. While in Rise of the Beasts, Unicron is out in space, in the Bayverse, it is the planet Earth itself, a plot that likely destroyed the Bayverse future, since the story would be too complex to have to awaken a Unicron, which would automatically doom Earth and the human race. So director Josh Cooley offered a different perspective on the matter. While producers were quick to label Transformers 1 as a prequel, Cooley stated that the movie is a reboot, not tied to the Bayverse at all. He said everybody knew from the very beginning that this was a reboot, a different continuity of what has been done before. He explained that the team behind the film had plenty of lore from Hasbro to work with, but they were able to take creative liberties to craft their own storyline, separate from the Bayverse. According to Cooley, the focus of the movie is on the emotional journey of Optimus and Megatron, or Orion Pax and D16, how their friendship deteriorated and how it led to a war we all know. He emphasized the importance of not being weighed down by excessive lore, saying the last thing you want is a history lesson of being told to you if it's not emotional. By keeping the core story about the bond between these two iconic characters, the film avoids getting tangled in the pre-existing continuities. Cooley added, "The cool thing about this being an origin story is we were able to go back further than anything has ever been seen in films before. This approach gives the creators more room to explore, but it also means that the film doesn't align with the events of Michael Bay's movies. For instance, Sentinel Prime His role in Transformers 1 contradicts what happens to him in Transformers Dark of the Moon, and Megatron's Prime the Fallen had a different backstory than in Revenge of the Fallen. Even the depiction of the matrix of leadership in Transformers 1 is entirely different from what we've seen in the live-action films. So while the producers might have initially tried to sell Transformers 1 as part of the existing continuity, likely to capture the audience attention from the highly successful Bayverse movies, the fanbase from there, the reality is quite different. Cooley's take and what we've seen is that Transformers 1 is its own thing, a reboot designed to tell a fresh origin story for a new generation of fans. In his words, knowing that the relationship between Optimus and Megatron was going to be an emotional thing, in his words it was like, what can we use to support that? Ultimately, Transformers 1 is shaping to be a unique chapter in the Transformers saga. It's a fresh start, unburdened by the complexities of the Bayverse, even if its producers were initially hesitant to market it as such. While it may not fit neatly into the timeline of previous movies, it promises to explore new depths of the lore and bring a new perspective on the classic conflict between Autobots and Decepticons. So is Transformers 1 a prequel? Not really. Maybe for the Bumblebee movie and maybe for Rise of the Beast, but not for the Bayverse movies. Anyway, that's that. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.